answer the question. Well, I don't know, a mixture of DNA / styling of hair, makeup. Hey everyone, what's up and welcome to another video of Inside Livybee's thoughts as she plays the StarCraft 2 ladder. Now this game is a bit of a pickle-y game. It starts off with your standard ZVT opening that you usually experience on the ladder. You know, the old friendship worm opening while eating a sandwich. Just standard Livibee strats, really. But I think the interesting part about this game is what happens when the friendship worm fails. When someone denies friendship to you on the ladder, it is a bit of a panicky situation, especially someone that you know IRL. You have to ask yourself the question, what did I do wrong? And where do I go from here? I know some players don't play with the health bars on. They actually only have the health bars displayed if the unit is damaged, and it throws me off too much. I like to have them on all the time. I'm a noob. All great questions and ones that I had to ask myself during this very specific game. I've actually met RunaMoK a couple of times now in person, and every time I meet him in real life, I never fail to mention Snackums, yeah, you know I do, man. How much I find his playstyle very, very annoying. So if you guys aren't familiar with the Nidus plays, or aka the friendship worm, just have a bit of a look-see-do at this game, I suppose. Yeah, my first overlord is named Ericsson. Sometimes he becomes an elevator. My fourth overlord is named Honeylord. And the sacrificial overlord, which is most likely the second overlord, his name's Bob. Bob always gets sacrificed. Poor Bob. Now, people come into my stream quite often and they're like, Livibee, you've played StarCraft 2 since its release in 2010. You play every day, and I'm new. Do you have any tips for a new player? I'm like, listen, viewer, you have come to the right place. I've got some tips for you, my dude. Tip number 1, play the game. Tip 2, name your overlords, every single one. If you haven't named your overlords yet, you're doing it wrong. If you don't develop a personal relationship with every one of your units, then how are you going to treat them with the dignity and the respect that they deserve to play the game for you? If they don't feel like they're honored, they won't play their best. So give each unit some love, especially the overlords. Also, rip Bob. Now, a part of the strength of this build is actually its element of surprise. If you can deny all the potential scouting from your Terran opponent of the early lair and the Roach Warren, and also, most importantly, the Nidus network, then catching your Terran opponent by surprise could give you a very significant lead or advantage. If they don't know the Nidus network exists, they don't know that they have to look for it. As soon as they find out there is a worm on the map, then of course they're going to be looking for those potential popular worm spawning locations. They'll make worm-denying units like Cyclones, Banshees, and Liberators, and especially the Siege Tanks. Those are the number one most annoying unit in the game to deal with when you're going for the worm. So the longer you can deny the scout, the better off this build will do. So you can see, to deny the scout from RunaMoK, I am actually putting my Zerglings and my Queen on the edge of the cliff to try and deny the Reaper Scout when it jumps up into my main base, while also protecting my drones in the natural with a Queen. And for you guys that don't know how the build goes, it's basically getting the lair with your first 100 gas, non-stop Queen production from your natural, making an additional 2 gases and a Roach Warren when your lair is about a quarter to a halfway done. As soon as the lair finishes, you want to throw down your Nidus network, have your overlords in position, and non-stop make Roach Queen. And then you just keep on worming your way to their side of the map. It's called the friendship worm because you want to have that direct friendship link from your base to theirs. Now, with my 2 overlords that I have positioned on his side of the map for optimal worming potential, I do scout that he has Hellions patrolling the high ground of his main base, in the specific location that I want to place the other end of my worm. So I do opt to place the worm in the natural instead. And this actually caught RunaMoK a little bit by surprise. He actually decides to lift off his natural command center, which is huge. This actually hinders his economy significantly. He's decided to be quite aggressive with his Banshee as well, which I actually do like this decision, because if I'm hindering his economy significantly, he does have to do the same to mine, otherwise he will fall very far behind. And just by the skin of his teeth, is that how the saying goes? The skin of his teeth, he's able to wiggle his way out of that dicey situation. Whew, that Banshee must have been like 1 HP. I'm telling you, my dudes, it was low. But I'm not going to give up on trying to extend my friendship worm. I place another worm in the side of his main base, and I'm like, we ain't giving up just yet. He does have units in position to deny this worm, but it just gets up. I did do a little bit of a miss micro by not transfusing the worm before it falls. I think I had like half a second there where I could have thrown down a transfuse to keep that worm alive with the queens that popped out. And now he positions his bunker and a siege tank to try and mitigate. And now RunaMoK has positioned a siege tank, a bunker, and his units to try and mitigate the potential damage that this worm is opting to do in his main base. He even sets up a Liberator on the top to add that additional DPS that makes it very difficult for the Roach Queen to infiltrate the production and mineral line. And it is just a little bit too much for my units to deal with. He spread out his units in such a key way to take a very cost-efficient engagement. So I will have to retreat with what very little remaining units I have back into my worm. Friendship denied, guys. Friendship denied.
Natural.
I think the really good thing for me, though, in this game so far is that he hasn't been able to retake his natural. And this is super key for me because I'm actually opting to take my third at this point, and I have 2 fully saturated bases. He's pushing out with Marine Hellion to try and retake this natural, but he does also have a lot of creep to contest against before he's able to do that, which means he has to spend energy on those orbital commands on scans rather than the much desired mules. A very pesky Banshee being annoying at my third base. I do manage to shoo them away with my 2 queens. And now we're gone full macro mode. We're gone for the double evolution chambers, infestation pit for further tech parts and infestors, and I'm getting baneling speed as well, which is very key transitioning to the mid game. If he's going to continue on marine tank, baneling speed is essential. Now, just to keep my opponent defensive, I am going to continue throwing down a few Nidus worms here and there, just to keep him on his toes and make it feel like he can't really get aggressive and move out just yet, which will allow me to be a little bit greedier, get a little bit more economy established before I have to make a ton of units and defend against any major attacks. He's roaming around with a bunch of marines around his bases to just really deny any Nidus worms that I can do any counter attacks with if he does decide to push out, which is definitely what you need to be doing as a Terran player in this position. But now we're making a round of banelings just in case he tries to get aggressive. I'm getting my double upgrades. I'm also going to make a Hydralisk den behind this because I feel like Hydras are really good at adding that necessary DPS. And now that my infestation pit's done, I can actually opt to tech to hive. Because as you know, I want to get those bee lords as soon as possible. I feel like when it comes to marine tank, it's so hard to engage mass siege tanks without the broodlords. So, gotta morph that hive. RunaMoK decides to send 2 Banshees to my main base as well. He's probably trying to see if he can do additional economic damage to my mineral line, get some scouting information, or pick off any stray queens or expensive gas-heavy units. That would be a really good cost-efficient trade for him. I gotta say, one of RunaMoK's strength is just being able to attack so many locations at the same time. He's so hyper-aggressive around the map, very active with his aggression. It's so frustrating to deal with his playstyle because you have to really be able to split your attention and multitask. And that's exactly what RunaMoK's trying to do here. He's trying to be aggressive with a Hellion and a couple of Banshees on one side of the map, while pushing to deny my newly built expansion at my 4th with a pretty decent sized Bioforce. And if he continues to keep this up, these small skirmishes really give him a lead into the game. Just small, cost-efficient, economic hindering engagements. And I'll tell you what, the supply block that I've inflicted on myself isn't helping. A great thing that helps against players like this is to make additional static defense. A great tip against Terran players that use this playstyle is actually to make a lot of static defense. Because the more static defense, the easier it will be to hold those small skirmishes that really set you behind quite significantly in the economy aspect, and be able to hold your bases. Like, if you can actually kill the drops with your static defense before they're able to do any damage, then you will skyrocket so far ahead. You just have to be able to catch them. Have a small hit force of Ling Bane, Queen in position for a bunch of units that might drop at a base to either kill off the hatchery or a bunch of drones. And I know I said this before, guys, but it is so key to have your creep spread as far out in the map as possible. It's the creep spread that will allow you to spot the multi-prong harass or incoming Bioforce, or even a setting up mass siege marine tank attack before it happens. The last thing you want against a Terran player is for them to set up perfectly their most ideal tanks marine spread on the edge of your creep to deny that base without having much room to work with. The further your creep spread out is into the map, the less room they have to work with, and that's really where you want to be. I'm also keeping a very close eye on how many bases RunaMoK gets up to. I'm sending out changelings into the map to scout potential expansions that he could be taking. So now I've seen that he's taken 4 bases very quickly in this game. It does allow me to expand myself even faster and be a little bit more greedy, but a 4-base Terran is kind of scary. And behind all this expanding, I finally have teched up to Broodlords. With my Broodlords, I'm going to be destroying these destructible rocks so that toward the late game, I can actually start mining this gold expansion safely from a much better position than taking the expansion on the other side of the rocks. And while pushing across with the Broodlords, I will be spreading creep underneath them as well to make more of a creep highway so that I can have my ground units more mobile beneath them. I definitely want to get my economy situated before I do a final engagement. As you know, Broodlords are so slow, so committing to an attack on his side of the map can be very dicey. Because if I lose my units, I won't be able to afford the remax if I don't have a good economy. So I do opt to turn my Broodlords back to kill off that Bioforce that killed off my 5th base. Wait till I have more optimal creep spread to take a better engagement. Now he's attacking on the other side of the map to kill off my other natural 5th base. But this time I'm going to have units in position and plant some creep there so that I can have a more favorable engagement when he does decide to attack. I do always keep a Ling at that 5th base of his just to make sure I can delay or deny the 5th base when he does opt to take it. If he goes up to 5 to 6 bases, this game's going to go on forever with the amount of economy he can make and just remax his units. Unfortunately, my Broodlords were being a little bit too offensive and some Vikings rocked up, and I actually lose basically my whole Broodlord army, and this is exactly what RunaMoK needed to get into the winning position of this game. I do have a good Corruptor force, but they arrive a little bit too late, and my Broodlord army is looking dismal at this point. And now full-blown RunaMoK comes into play, where he's attacking multiple positions all around the map, which is making it very difficult for me to secure a 5th base. He kills off the 5th base at the top left, while simultaneously attacking the bottom right. I do manage to save my bottom right hatchery, but it's preventing me from being aggressive. I morphed a bunch more Broodlords in the middle of the map as well, just trying to prepare myself for the next big engagement. And I see with my Queen that is somehow, for some reason, out in the middle of the map, probably trying to spread creep there, that he's trying to opt to take this gold expansion. So I've decided to And now I'm finally able to be a little bit more aggressive. A little bit of breathing room so that I can start putting on pressure to him with my Broodlords. Only to my not very much surprise, he's attacking that top left expansion of mine again with another 3 medivac drop of Bioforce. I send only my ground units back to deal with this though, which is my queens, my roaches, my hydras, banelings and zerglings. But I tell you what makes the engagement really painful for me with my Broodlord Corruptor Infestor Force is those EMPs from these ghosts. Without energy on my infestors, my Broodlord Force becomes so much weaker. You get a really key EMP on all of my infestors, which is so painful for me in this up and coming engagement. He has such a large Liberator Force too, and he throws down all the Liberator zones, zoning out the army, which protects his ground forces from me committing entirely to this engagement. He has his ghosts on the front line, cloaked, sniping off my Broodlords, and looking for those money EMPs. I'm trying to get a good positioning with my Corruptors to try and pick off a couple of Liberators as well from the top side. And then I hear the worst possible sounding sound effect in the game that you can possibly hear from a Terran player. Nuclear launch detected. Did RunaMoK really incorporate nukes into this game? How did he know? My weakness. This actually brings a whole new element to the game, which makes it even more difficult for me to deal with. I gotta be alert to see when the nuclear launches go down on any of my expansions, because I don't want to lose an enormous amount of my economy just from one nuke. And I've got his main army to deal with in the middle of the map. So without being able to kill off the ghost in time that was nuking my base on the right hand side of the map, I had to just evac all my drones from that location temporarily. And I gotta breathe a sigh of relief to the fact that he actually backed up his mass amount of Liberator siege army on this 5th base in the right hand side of the map. So I have a little bit of breathing room to replant my creep and position my units in a more favorable spread. Now I am absolutely maxed at this point in the game, but I feel like my army
This doesn't seem like I've got enough.
just is a lot weaker than his. He just feels like he's got so much more than me. And he's posturing forth once again. I get a really nice juicy fungal on a huge amount of Vikings, but I wasn't able to chain it because he just has so much pressing forth onto this 5th base. I have to evacuate it once again. And my poor Broodlords are fleeing for their lives. I burrow my infestors, and luckily he doesn't actually have detection to snipe those infestors off with those Liberator zones or the ghosts. So the Broodlords push forth, actually pick off a couple of his ghosts, which is really nice for me, while I'm expanding on the other side of the map. My poor drones got demolished in the process though. He had no mercy for those poor little dronies.
It feels like he's got so much more than me. I'm really not entirely sure how.
It was a drone barbecue, I tell you. A drone barbecue. RunaMoK is definitely max in this game. He's got a very large army. And he also obliterated a huge chunk of my army. I was maxed before that engagement, and I lost almost 50 supply after the engagement.
Like, was absolutely maxed.
Luckily, I do have a nice bank, but that bank is going to diminish rather quickly trying to max out again. So economy is actually my #1 priority in this game. I need to have a decent economy to rebuild that bank so that I can remax after the next engagement, because I feel like with RunaMoK's micro and his EMPs and his snipes, I just need to have more. I've decided to take this middle gold base as well for more efficient mining. I'm scouting around with my Corruptors as well. I want to see if I can possibly caustic spray down a command center or two that might be a little bit unprotected from a large amount of missile turrets or Vikings, while slowly working my army size back up to being maxed out. Gas is also really essential at this point in the game. I just don't have enough gas. I have a decent amount of minerals, but against RunaMoK's unit composition, I definitely need more gas intensive units to be able to really hammer down the front of his army, really poke with the broodlings out of range of the Thors, and do the best I can to take a cost-efficient engagement. I'm trying to find that perfect window of opportunity to do a good and efficient amount of damage as well. I see that the gold base is really well protected. So I decided to push forth more toward his main. Maybe I can try and get on top of his production line instead. I feel like I have gotten a really nice damage done. I've wiped out all the missile turrets, and I'm starting to spray down some of those command centers. Luckily, his army was a little bit out of position so that I could actually get that damage done. But now that he's repositioned his army, he's thrown down his liberator zones, he's got his Vikings protecting his liberators and his ghosts on the low ground ready to EMP and snipe. I do have to back my Broodlords up, but I do see a fungal opportunity of where he's trying to push forth with his Vikings to try and pick up a juicy Broodlord. But I have my Infestors in position, and I fungal down those Vikings and try and chain the Vikings, but he does get the Thors underneath his Vikings, and the Thors are actually really good anti-air for Terran. I do have Neural Parasite, of course, because you can't really go up against Mech Terran without Neural Parasites these days, which is what RunaMoK is transitioning into, rather than going for mass amounts of bio. They decided to go for more of the Mech comp, which is Thors, Liberators, Vikings, tanks, all that good stuff that Zerg players really find a struggle against in the late game. So I throw down some Neural Parasites on those Thors, but he does have those ghosts. And it is a little bit of a dicey situation because he throws down those EMPs and my Infestors are now completely out of energy. But I actually just have a lot of units at this point. I've got a decent amount of Broodlords left over and a decent number of Corruptors to protect them. I gather all my forces and I decide to commit to this engagement. I get my Hydra Queen force up and going to protect my Broodlords from the low ground, throwing down those transfuses so that I can replenish the HP on those Broodlords and my Corruptors. And finally, for the first time in this game, I feel like I might actually have the supply advantage. He throws down a defensive nuke to my surprise, which forces my units to back up because I don't know where the hell all my overseers went, but I have none with my army. So I can't actually detect the cloaked ghost in order to kill it before the nuke goes off. So I back up momentarily. I'm like, alright, RunaMoK, give you some breathing room. But as soon as that nuke's done, I'm coming back in. And you better be prepared. Although hopefully, secretly, I'm hoping he's not. So I can win. I morph more Overseers. I also morph more Overseers in case he's got some extra nukes up his sleeve. And that is just a lot of ghosts. But I gotta say, those Vikings and ghosts are a little bunched up there, RunaMoK. And without him watching, I actually throw down a money fungal, and RunaMoK decides to tap out.
What
GG.
do you mean? He had me.
The victory goes to the bee.
Had killed me. Like I was
Buzz
dead.
Buzz winning.
But then he decided to like back up and not kill me. It was so nice of him. Vabu, thank you so much for the raid. How was the stream? I hope you had an amazing day. We just beat our arch nemesis RunaMoK.
GG, well played, Liv. I think he bought you.
I thought he had more stuff behind. Yeah, I think so. Because look at this graph. Look when I was... Like, it was a perfect setup that he had with the Thors and the...
Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you
like,
enjoyed it.
one.
I hope you learned something about
I'm really surprised he did.
ZVT, the power of the money fungal. And
Good game either way.
and hopefully I'll see you guys for the next video. Buzz buzz.